The infamous process known as KYC is now being subverted and disrupted by AI. Is it the end of KYC or just the beginning? Welcome back, everyone. We are going to take a look at this. I actually think it was a tweet by Sir Ulrich that I saw in regards to essentially these fake IDs that are getting made better and better due to AI. Anyways, let's dive into it. AI creates fake IDs to bypass verification. Is it the end of KYC? No, I highly doubt it's the end of KYC. In order to trade crypto using some of the major crypto markets, investors must go through a know your customer verification step and provide valid identification document. However, technical advancements in AI could threaten this current model. A new AI-based tool now allows people to create realistic fake IDs within minutes for $15. That's great. That's great. Anyway, so here we go. The service called OnlyFake claims to be able to generate over 20,000 fake IDs daily. At full capacity, this would mean a daily revenue of $300,000 for its developers. Exchanges like Kraken have commented about measures to prevent users from bypassing verification with AI-generated fake IDs. Other players in the industry are also considering using longer and more complex KYC methods, such as real-time video calls. Now, I'll tell you why real-time video calls aren't really going to happen, or are most likely not going to be rolled out industry-wide, so to speak. It doesn't scale, okay? It just doesn't scale. You need an actual person, right? You need a human being on the other end of that video in order to go and validate the data. And that's kind of the problem. Of course, somebody could make an argument to say, oh, well, we can have these video calls, but have an AI have the video call, but that's literally just supplanting the problem. You're just moving it from the AI that created the fake documents to now the AI is going to verify if that person is real when the thing that's verifying them isn't even real. Anyways, it really ends up in a strange type of situation. But anyways, let's continue. The industry and the market must adapt and change. Nevertheless, it's important to understand that faking IDs is criminal in all jurisdictions. Therefore, service providers and users might face legal action against their attempts to bypass KYC mechanisms. Okay, so a couple of things. KYC has existed, at least for me, since I was a kid and I went to go make my first bank account. You had to provide some proof of identification. And as we all know, right, especially Bitcoiners, the data points that they are collecting are only increasing. Now, this type of situation, right, where AI can fake these IDs, did anybody actually think that this wasn't inevitable? I hope not, because I mean, it seems pretty obvious, right? Like, if you think about it, we already had people that were faking IDs and they were doing it manually. And a great example of that is the movie Catch Me If You Can, right? The Frank Abagnale story, or Abagnale. Anyways, I don't know. I can't pronounce his last name right. But that is a great example of, yep, it was already being done back in the 70s and the 80s. So and I mean, I'm sure that there's evidence of, faked identification even before that. But the point being is that AI is only going to facilitate that. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, okay, so if there's nothing, if that is inevitable, what happens next? Sadly, unfortunately, what happens next is most likely the type of KYC scenarios we do not want, which is the biometric chipping, right? Because at some point, if every document or every device can be tampered and faked, the argument becomes, well, we need to implant something in the person, right? There needs to be some type of proof of personhood, So unfortunately, I think that this goes this goes in the direction of dystopia. There really is now, because I've thought about this before, right? So I try to imagine a scenario. Okay, so what if we didn't have any KYC at all? Like, what type of a scenario would we be looking at? Would there be more? Would there be more of these types of financial crimes, or would there be more individual people taking personal responsibility to do the research in order to make sure that people aren't passing fake information? Because the thing is this, right? And this is what took me a little while to realize this, okay? The more processes that are created for us to follow, the easier it is to create scenarios where data can pass all of those checkpoints and be deemed legitimate. And the evidence that we have of that is currently KYC's ineffectiveness, right? If and I always cite this account, but people should definitely check him out. Dr. Ron Paul. He is by far, I think, the most the person who understands the most and has done the most conclusive research on the effectiveness of KYC. And if I'm not mistaken, the Know Your Customer process has only been determined to be useful in like 0.01 or 0.03% of any type of those scenarios where essentially there was some type of illegal, behavior being done, and it was essentially through the use of institutions that required KYC, right? Like, well, the easiest one is money laundering, right? Through the banking system, but essentially that doesn't bode well for KYC, right? So that's the other piece to this. Okay, so we create this technology seemingly right, that this was what we could do at the time, and we think it's the best, right? We'll just put out the narrative there. Hey, this is the best scenario that we can think of, this KYC process. This is right now, this is the peak of what we can do. Knowing that it is unsatisfactory, knowing that it actually only provides a checklist for criminals to essentially go through and make sure that they've dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's, and then they can be essentially validated and legitimized by whatever system was offering KYC. Well, so we know all of this. So is that done on purpose, right? Is that done on purpose so that we end up in one of these more heavily regulated KYC environments where essentially the know your customer increasingly comes closer to you? And what I mean by that is that, look, right now, we hand paperwork to somebody. We hand them an ID card. Okay. At some point, that ID card isn't good anymore because of all of the people who have been able to subvert the checklist. Okay. So now, by virtue of the system, we need to implement something that is more complex, something that ensures a higher rate of personhood. And I mean, if you start to think of those scenarios, like, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at scanning retinas, we're looking at biometric chipping, and we're looking at all of the weird dystopian stuff that we saw from the sci-fi movies back in the 70s. So yeah, anyways, it's a slippery slope. We are not, look, states, and again, it's just a blanket statement, right? Any state is going to want to have as much control as possible, and is going to want to increasingly monitor their population as much as possible. So the idea, right? The idea that all of a sudden, right, KYC measures are just going to be like a video phone call or something like that, that is not practical and not scalable. So I think, unfortunately, it's going to be much more dystopian than that. I would definitely expect the retina scans or the chipping. You can also make the case, right, that because, look, retina scans have been going on for years. In the previous field that I worked in, we already had retina scanners that were being used, right, to enter and exit buildings. That this was already being used. Let's see, we're in 2024. 2011, something like that. It's like some of the first iterations of iris scanning for access control, okay, was done what was done back then. And don't get me wrong, it was totally clunky, but it was already being done, and it could already be implemented in just a like a regular scenario for securing a building. So yeah, I really don't see this going much better than either the iris scanning or the chipping. I know that Microsoft is working on their DID, which is what is it, like the distributed identification, or anyways, that is also part of this, I believe. Like I don't know how it fits in entirely, but I'm sure that it will fit in. Anyways, I don't want to keep blabbing. KYC bothers me a lot, but I think it's important that we cover it, at least that we keep up to date with what's happening. I don't think anybody's surprised that AI is going to defeat KYC processes. I think what we need to be vigilant about, and what we need to be most concerned about, are the measures that are going to be deemed to be necessary going forward when it is determined that these IDs can no longer be trusted. Guys, let me know what you think. This is what I wanted to talk about today. I'll catch you all tomorrow.